to be involved with you, to be collaborating with you, to focus on the documentary Nasrin. This documentary follows the life and work of the Iranian human rights lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh, and up until the time of her second arrest and imprisonment in Iran's notorious prison, the Evin prison, and this movie goes all the way until 2018. I am so happy to have a chance to speak with two brilliant women and focus on this extraordinary documentary. Our first speaker is Marsha Ross, and she's the producer of Nasrin. During her nearly 40 years as an independent casting director and casting executive for motion pictures and television, Marsha has worked on hundreds of featured films, network series, pilots, movies for television, and miniseries. She served for 16 years as the executive president for casting for the Walt Disney Motion Picture Group. And Marsha was born and raised in New York City. She's a fellow New Yorker, now lives in LA, and I want to welcome Marsha. So Marsha, let's start first with you. Welcome again, and tell us a little bit about the film, and then let's move into watching the trailer.
Great. First of all, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. It's early in the morning in Los Angeles, and I was very happy to get up for this. And I'm just so excited to have an international audience because, you know, Nasrin is really a very well-known international figure, and this is such a tremendous event. So thank you for inviting us and to speak about the film. So we're going to just start. For those of you, I don't know how many this morning have actually seen the film. I just want to tell you, we're going to show the trailer first, and then we'll talk about how we made the film and a lot of other things. But we also are making the film available to people attending today through Sunday. So I think there's information about how you can actually get a free link to the film if you're on the program today. Also, and I'll talk about this more, the film is showing around the world. And actually I just want to say, because I'm so excited for our friends in Ireland who are on today, on Monday, the film is going to be at the Imagine Festival of Ideas and Politics in Belfast. So we're pretty excited about that. And if folks are in Iran, I think Iran Wire is showing it again, making it available this month in Iran. It was on in November. So we're going to start by showing the trailer. Thank you so much, Devin.
Excellent.
Nasrin Sotoudeh is a prominent lawyer in Iran who's been fighting for children's rights, women's rights, and human rights.
She is one of the bravest voices in Iran.
She took on cases that other lawyers were too afraid to take on.
We've seen Nasrin Sotoudeh jailed for defending human rights.
And it has cost her and her young family a lot.
Protesting against the law which forces Iranian women to wear the hijab.
The country's most prominent human rights activist and a voice for the voiceless.
I had been in Iran maybe a week, and I knew how to toe the line as a woman. And then I meet Nasrin Sotoudeh, who doesn't toe the line at all.
داستان یک عمریه که ما با این مسائل دست و پنجه داریم نرم میکنیم ولی اجازه نمیدیم که باز دست به خون دیگرانی آلوده.
On Wednesday, Nasrin Sotoudeh was again arrested. She had been tried and convicted in absentia. According to her husband, she intends to continue her activism from prison.
یک جامعه بدون پرداخت هزینه به هیچ جا نرسیده. همه احزاب، گروه‌ها، افراد آزادانه بتونن تو بحث‌ها مشارکت کنن. اینه که این پرونده برای من اهمیت داره.
Should I jump in? I can hear you. Need to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Marsha. This was excellent.
Thank
Yeah. Yes, can you tell us about the film? I think everyone would like to hear, how did Nasrin's story inspire you to make this film? And how did you manage to make this film as an American filmmaker while you were living in LA?
Well, first, I just want to say that for the moment Nasrin came home for Nowruz, the revolutionary courts, they, you never know what they're going to do, but they did let her come home. So she's home for, we don't know for how long. The last time she was home a couple of other times earlier this year, because she had surgery for her, she had an angioplast for her heart. So, but then she had to go back. So we're very grateful right now that she's got some time with her family. So my partner, who's also the director of the film, he had made a film called Education Under Fire about 10 years ago about the persecution of the Baha'i faith in Iran. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, they have no freedom and they're not allowed really to go to school. And it's very, very difficult for people of Baha'i, and they're, often just killed, as you can see if you've seen the film, you'll see that the regard for people of Baha'i faith is very little. And Nasrin took it upon herself to defend people of that faith, as she does with so many other people, marginalized communities, not just, women, LGBT, people on death row. And at that, he was very taken with this idea about, Muslim people helping their neighbors. Yeah. And so through this, I got introduced to her, and I was just very, very taken with this woman. I mean, she's a brilliant, strategic person, and she's so charismatic. And that's the other thing, I've been a casting director for a long time, and I always think in the sort of the narrative sense. And when you're going to make a film, you want to have a charismatic character. Although Nasrin was very clear when we started to make the film that she did not want the film to be about her. She wanted it to be about all the people, who do the kind of work that she does. And I think, that really speaks to who she is. And I felt, that her story needed to be told. I mean, if you're in Iran, you probably, and a lot of Americans or, people from other countries who live in exile, they know who she is, but a lot of Americans don't know who she is. I didn't know who she was. And I also felt that she was such a role model and such a, inspiring person, particularly for the times that we live in. And I was afraid, that if her story wasn't told, it'd just be written away. It's really easy for the history books to bury people or to, not really write about their accomplishments. It's told often, as we know, men write the history books, and they marginalize the roles that women play. And Nasrin has played an outstanding role, in Iran, and she has for many years. So we wanted to really have her story. So through mutual friends, we in 2016, shortly after that last election for president of this country, we were introduced to her, and we started talking to her and Reza about the film. And she was very clear, as I said, that the film should not just be about her. If we're willing to make a film about the movement and about the people, about the other activists, then she would lead the way with all of that. And the other thing, we were very nervous about her safety, as you can imagine.
Yeah. And
so we've often asked her throughout the entire time we were making the film, are you sure? Are you okay? Do you really want us to do it? We'll stop at any time. And as you'll see in the film, she was arrested in 2018 while we were making the film, and I'll explain why, but she wasn't because of the film. And even when we finished the film, before we even showed it to the public, we asked her one more time, and she was fine about it. And everybody signed releases, and we're comfortable with that. And I must say that while we were editing the film, it really, really became clear to me what this film meant to her, because it did become an opportunity for her to say everything she wanted to say before she might be silenced again. Although we didn't know that she would be arrested, I think she felt that something she was going to do, some work that she might take on, might have that happen. And what did happen is that she started representing these young women for the Girls of Revolution Street movement, as you know, taking off their headscarves in public to protest the mandatory hijab law. We're going to see a scene from the film later about this very fact. And she was arrested for that. So she was able to really tell us what she thinks about many, many things through the film before she was not able to speak to us for quite a while. And, you know, her husband was arrested. He's home on bail. They brought her daughter in. You know, the government is just, you know, they will do anything to try to shut her up, and she refuses to be quiet. And she's pretty remarkable that way. She just refuses to be quiet, and in all kinds of different ways. So how did we make the film? Well, you know, as I said, we really couldn't go to Iran for several reasons. One of which was that Jeff had made a number of films for Amnesty International about Iran. And so we would have been arrested instantly, you know, but I think also as two people from, you know, two Americans, you know, on the ground in Iran, you know, carrying, you know, with a couple of crew members following her around, that would have been impossible. We would never have been able to, we would have been arrested then too, actually. So we were able to find some camera people who really believe in what she's doing, and they followed her around. And that is really how we were able to get so much intimate coverage of her life and everything she was doing, and a full picture of her life. Now, not just her work in the courts or her work with her clients, but also, you know, with her family and her children and some of her passions in life. And it was how we were really able to create a fully rounded portrait of this person, because we also wanted to really have a balanced picture of who she was as an activist, as a mother, as a human being. And I think that's also, I think one of the things that makes her so unique, and I think really affects people when they see the film, you know, is not just her incredible inner strength, but how modest that she is and how normal this family really seems in spite of what she's doing. Additionally, we did travel around the world and we did interview other people, which was, you know, really important, and especially important to me. You know, if you're an Iranian person listening today who can't go back to Iran or cannot live in Iran because of, you know, various political purposes, or, you know, you just can't go back. And I think one thing I really learned, and it was important to convey in the film, was that, you know, Iran is a really beautiful country with a rich cultural history, and that the people that can't live there anymore, many of them really miss it and would love to go back, and they can't because of the politics there. And that was one thing we wanted to capture. And we also felt that, I think you know, again, wonderful that people are in so many different countries. And if you're in Europe, or, you know, or outside the United States, you may know more about Nasrin, because that's what many people do. But in this country, you know, people don't really, you know, get that international news. And what they get, if they actually read the news, not if they watch it on cable, you know, they only get, you know, the saber rattling between the two governments and what's going on, you know, between our president and their president.
That's true.
What you don't get is the culture and the people. And I think that one thing I've learned making documentaries and over the course of my life is that we all share a common humanity, and that, you know, we're all people, and the people of Iran are not the government of Iran, just like the people of, you know, the United States are not who is the president at the time. You know, not everybody stormed the Capitol, you know, most people didn't. But if that's all you saw on TV, what do you think about this place? So,
you know, that's really great. You know, I want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, before we move on, I want to welcome Susan O'Malley, who's the former chairwoman of the NGO CSW New York. Welcome, Susan. And we're speaking with Marsha Ross, who's the producer of Nasrin. And, you know, Marsha, Nasrin and I are contemporaries. We both were teenagers during the Iranian Revolution, and Nasrin and I stand on the shoulders of our mothers and grandmothers who fought for women's rights. And many don't know that Iran has a very vibrant and organized feminist movement. Iran has a long history of women's activism, and women's movement began in Iran in the 1890s as part of a movement against dictatorship and colonization in Iran. And women have fought hard for our rights to get an education, to vote. And you know, again, Nasrin really stands on the shoulders of Shirin Ebadi, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And I know Nasrin worked for
Yes,
Shirin Ebadi.
She got it. That's Shirin, who we interviewed for the film, you know, suggested she become a lawyer. And actually, when she went to prison the first time, it was for representing her, you know, when they had the, you know, the million signature campaign, as you know. I mean, to just reiterate what you just said, that's the other thing to take away from this film. The women of Iran are extraordinary. They're very highly educated, much more in many ways than the men. You know, they're very brave people because they have really pushed and continued to fight for rights, you know, at great risk to themselves. And the feminist, if you want to call it, the feminine or the women's movement in Iran is, I think, probably the strongest in the world I've come across.
Why do you think that is?
You know, I mean, I think part of it is, you know, historically women were much well educated. So I think they're much more worldly and they're much more aware, you know, of things. And, you know, they're thinking about things and, you know, they have children and they think about the future for their children. I think that's often why women become activists, because they are thinking about the future for their children and they don't want the same thing for their children. And I think the oppression becomes, you know, what, in a way, when you're so oppressed like that, you know, what is your choice? You know, give up or fight. And since, you know, if, you know, there's really nothing on the other side, so you fight. And at great risk, by the way, you know, as you see, she went to prison, she's left her kids. Shirin cannot live in the country anymore. You know, she had to flee. She lost her property and everything. You know, it's a great risk, but you know, it's the sacrifice, but it's the belief that you're not going to make a difference for your children in the next generation with you know, without taking these actions. It's bigger than your selfish like feeling, you know. And also, as you know, like you're talking about inspiration, we're going to see a scene in a minute about this, and that Nasrin also, and like yourself and like Shirin, you know, Shirin, you know, influenced Nasrin, and Nasrin is influencing other young women, you know, and they become role models for, you know, what it can be, what a society can do.
Yeah. So I guess I was going to ask you the question, what's one of your favorite scenes in this movie? And I think you've referred to it a couple of times. So tell us about the scene and let's watch the 3-minute clip.
Talk about 2 or 3 things before. I want to say one of my favorite, I have a lot of very favorite moments in the film, but one of my favorite moments is when, and we're not going to see it today, but is when Nasrin is picking her son up from school and he's got his little backpack, you know, and she's walking him home and she's holding hands and there's a voiceover. And, you know, I think that really speaks to the universality of you know, of people, you know, women all over the world pick their children up from school and walk them home, you know, activists, you know, all kinds of people. And also there's a scene when her husband, Reza, who's also very well featured in the film, who's a great partner to him and a great supporter, is talking about, you know, when he's shyly going to ask her to marry him. And he has this little smile. I mean, they're a great team. But the scene we're going to show today, while we're making the film, as you know, it was the Girls of Revolution Street, and she started representing people, and we were able to focus on one of her clients, Nargis Husseini, as a way to tell the story of how she got involved and what actually led to her current arrest. So I think Devin's going to play that now.
Yeah.
And while we're waiting just a bit, I think she's just setting it up. I want to say that you'll see in the film, you know, how the courts, you know, they don't, you know, the courts are rigged and stacked against everybody. You know, the courts are run by the government and, you know, it's extremely difficult. And to persevere is pretty extraordinary. I think probably it's just people give up, you know, a lesser people just finally give up. You know,
That's right.
You know, fortunately in our country here after the last election, you know, because the courts hadn't been entirely corrupted, we were able to have a free and fair election that, you know, we now have a different president because our legal system, you know, and the judges, you know, weren't in the hands and the pockets of, you know, the revolutionary leaders of the country, so to speak. Although, in fact, it's odd that they call themselves revolutionary because, in fact, they're quite the opposite. They're completely oppressive and backwards. They're not revolutionary at all. That's a misnomer.
Right. You know, Marsha, as we're waiting, I want to say, I think Devin is trying to set it up, that, you know, we in Iran, activism and feminism exist in the families, in the court system, in the work environment, on the street. Women have been demonstrating everywhere and speaking up. And it has not been, and it has been an incredibly difficult situation over 30 years. And there are a number of Iranian women here on the call. And I wanted to see if there are any Iranian women who want to say a few words while we're waiting. If you are Iranian and you would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Or have a question. I'm happy to answer questions to the best of my ability.
Or you can write your questions in the chat box.
You know, the other thing that I love, another moment of mine, there's a couple of other things. One of them is when you'll see she's holding the cloth, you know, when she's talking about the headscarf, and she's saying, you know, it's not whether or not, you know, we earn the right to, you know, to not wear it. We want the decision, we wear it or we don't wear it. That should be our decision. That's not the decision someone else should be making on our behalf. You know, that's the freedom. You know, that's really the freedom. And also, as you said, you know, when you make a film and you edit a film and you watch it over and over and over again, you know, you start to see these people repeating in, you know, over and over again in these groups of women that she's around, some of the men that show up, you know, when she's protesting to get her law license back. It's pretty incredible, really. To, you know, that you know, that people, you know, was really interesting to me too, because, you know, you hear from this side that what you hear, but then when you watch, you know, when you make the movie, you see that there are lots of people that are speaking up. There's lots of people that are fighting back. You never know when the government's going to bring down the hammer, would you say?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you have any questions for Marsha, please put them in the chat box. We will come back to that. But for now, we're ready to watch Marsha's favorite section. Thank you.
This is the music. This is the music video. It's not the scene.
Marsha, can we watch this and then go back?
Sure. So yes, let's do that. So let me just explain what this is, okay? So this is the music video that we made based on the end title song from the film. And one of the things, again, when you make a film, is that you have so much material that you cannot use it all. And one of the remarkable things is that Nasrin wrote these beautiful letters to her children from prison. A little bit you hear from the actress Olivia Colman is reading a little bit, but we just had this trove of great things. And we thought, well, what are we going to do with this? And we thought, well, maybe a song. And so a song, you know, an end title song. So we had the good fortune from our last film that we made about the Broadway theater to have worked with Lynn Aronson, Stephen Flaherty, the Tony Award winning composers who wrote Ragtime that many people know, and Once on This Island and Seussical and, you know, Anastasia. And so we gave them the letters and they were really, really inspired by them. And they wrote this extraordinary song that the first time we heard it, we just wept, and I kind of weep every time I hear it. And then we were really wonderfully fortunate that the legendary Grammy winner singer, Angelique Kidjo, who's, you know, so well known around the world, she actually performs the song. And this is the music video we made. So that's it.
Yeah. This is also one of my favorite pieces. Thank you.
can I tell you my truth, little one? How can I tell you the things I have done? Though I cannot see the sky, you know, I only think of you. And you shine for me more brightly than the sun. And how can I tell you the tears I have shed? Are you still lonely each night in your bed? I could tell you to forget me, but the words would not be true. And I love you always, even if you do. I am weakness, I am mother. We are part of one another. I am stronger and more hopeful than it seems. And my story is your story that I sent you from a prison with 1,000 tender kisses for your dreams. For the mothers and the daughters and the children, I am strong. I am weakness, I am mother. We are born of one another. I am stronger and more hopeful than it seems. And my story is your story that I sent you from my prison with 1,000 tender kisses for your dreams. This is my story with love, Nasrin.
Thank you. This was lovely. You know, um, I often think about Nasrin's, and for me, I find myself so connected with Nasrin as a fellow human, a feminist, and as a woman warrior and human rights defender. And I think that we see it over and over throughout the movie, that what's most compelling about the movie, this documentary, is that Nasrin is portrayed both as a humble, regular woman, as you said, Marsha, and a force to be reckoned with, who refuses to be silent. And this movie is helping mobilize an urgent response of international solidarity for Nasrin and other women human rights defenders who are tortured and imprisoned and killed for fighting to bring about radical change for women and girls. And throughout this week at the NGO CSW forum, we've been hearing story after story of girls and young adult females and women from all around the globe who are standing up for women's rights, who are standing up for labor rights of women, who are standing up for against child marriage, against discrimination, and who are imprisoned and tortured and at times killed and silenced for standing up for these rights. So I want to go back to you, Marsha, and can you again talk about how do you channel your passions, I would say, for human rights into concrete action, into filmmaking? Talk about how you really, what's been your journey in this process?
Well, It's interesting you say. So as we talked about this. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell Devin, Jeff sent her something that she might be able to play. What? He's going to send her something else from the film. So
thank you.
Thank you.
We're trying to work something out here. But, I started my career in the theater. I love the theater. I was a casting director, as you know, for a long time, and had the opportunity to, help and start a lot of people. That was always interesting. I like helping people, I like having purpose and making a difference and casting was kind of a melding of the thing I loved most in the world, which was theater and acting and, trying to make a difference. But I always knew I wanted to do something else with my life. I didn't know what it was going to be. And then, this opportunity to start making films, documentary films came up, and I was able to sort of segue out of casting while using a lot of the same skills, into producing, because I've done a lot of things in casting that lend itself to producing. And, I'm very interested in people who and Nasrin is one of those people who really try to make a difference in the world, often at great cost to themselves. When you work in the entertainment industry, like I did literally for 40 years, I mean, I dropped out of college at 20 to work in the theater. I didn't get my college degree till 2016. So it's a long time in between. It's not a selfless business. It's people are about themselves and advancing themselves. And yes, you see a lot of famous people have causes. And I think that's really important when you have a platform, but it requires in some ways a great deal of selfishness, because it's a very hard business and it takes a lot to succeed. And so people, are kind of wrapped up in, what's in it for them.
Yeah.
And Nasrin is an example of, somebody to me who it's not what's in it for her. She's trying to make a difference in the lives of other people. And she, and as I said, at cost to her, but at great meaning and great purpose. And I've really spent a lot of time thinking about this, because with the prison sentences and all of the things, like, when you see her, we've seen her now as she's come out of prison, and we speak to her when she comes home. Mm-hmm. She hasn't lost her, for want of a better word, joie de vivre. I mean, she laughs, she's funny. I'll tell you what she said when she saw the movie when she came home. And I think it's because she has real purpose in life. Her purpose helps her kind of rise above, the kind of the day-to-day gritty reality of the awfulness of what she's living with, and actually keeps her going. And I really admire that in other people. And I think so many people, which having done this, human rights defenders around the world, imprisoned and not imprisoned, this is the thing I'm really taken with, that sense of purpose. People that work for NGOs and are human rights defenders also don't make a lot of money like actors make, and people in show business make. So you're not in it for the money. You're in it because you really want to make a difference, and this gives your life purpose. And I think that's very, very important to me overall as a human being. It's what I want my own life to be. And I think also, through each film that I've met, one of our films was about these incredible female attorneys. It's called The State of Marriage. And it's about these two small town Vermont lawyers who essentially changed the world because they came up with the first legal arguments that were won for same-sex marriage, civil union in the United States. And they were being written out of the history books too. And this minute I met them, it's like, no. We need to have their story. We don't have to think all the men did this. These women did this. And this really kind of brought me to this point of, that's the kind of stories I want to tell. People have purpose that's greater than their own self-interest. I think that's just incredible. And one other thing that I think has also been transformational for me, living in Los Angeles, obviously there's a lot of Iranian exiles, that you meet, people that fled actually after the Shah. And I'll just tell you, for people from Iran who are on the call, when I first moved out here in 1980, I had a little rent controlled apartment in Beverly Hills of all places. And there was this apartment building across the street. It was 1980, 81. And every weekend there were these huge parties, and I was like, "What is it?" And it was basically like Iran Central. When people would come to the United States, this is the first place they would be. But with the film, it's different, because through this film, I've met so many Iranian people who, were really, intellectuals, educators, politically active people who actually were forced to leave the country. They had to go, or they would end up dead or in prison, or had families that were dead or in prison. And I think it's been just really life-changing for me to meet people like this. It's hard. It just takes a lot to do that with your life. And it also really takes a lot. And I'll tell you one other funny little story, and then I'll tell you the Nasrin story. But when we interviewed Shirin Ebadi in London, one of the things I do during the filmmaking is I talk to, I talk to the people in between, because, once you start opening up and chatting, when they have to change the film or change the card or do that, you don't want the person to come out of the moment. So, I've had years of experience talking to actors and people in rooms, and that's one thing I do. I really engage with people and keep them in the moment of what we're talking about. And I started to talk to Shirin about, Iran and her children, and and she's had gone through a lot, and she's a strong character. But when she started talking about the country of Iran and the beauty of the country, I mean, you could see this sort of thing come out of her. And I knew at that moment, and Jeff and I talked about that, how much we needed to capture that in the film. So when Reza had seen the film, we sent it to him, obviously. The film didn't come out till October, but he saw the film right before it came out. And then he showed it to the kids, and he told her about it because he's kept her informed of everything. But he didn't, and then she came home and she saw the film. And the first time she came out of prison after she had that 46, 47 day, fast, she was not in good shape, and she had the heart thing, but she caught COVID in the prison. And then the whole family got COVID. So she was sort of getting over COVID. They sent her back, and then she came back again for the surgery. But when she saw the film, the first thing she said to us was, again, what you brought up at the beginning, how these two Americans, wanted to make this movie about her, we are married, that really struck her. But also she was so funny. She said, when I was all that choppy footage, I didn't know how in the world were you ever going to make it into a movie? She was very, and she's been so thank you letters to, Olivia Colman and to Angelique and to Lynn and Stephen, she's been just so wonderful. So
yeah, I do want to really appreciate you as a filmmaker, as an artist. Often those of us who are activists and who are working on the on the ground forget about the role of arts. And again, I really appreciate those of you who are artists, those of you who are filmmakers, those of you who really use visual arts to bring the messages or the work that we're doing on the ground into your work, and spread really the messages of social justice to the rest of the world. And I think artists have played a very big role in building international solidarity. That, watching this film, really, you don't have to be an Iranian to connect to Nasrin. You don't have to be from that part of the world. So again, I really appreciate the role that filmmaking and arts plays in really strengthening social movements, strengthening the feminist movement, and also protecting the rights of human rights defenders. Devin, are we ready to show that segment now?
No. He sent you another scene, but it's in keeping with the subject matter.
Okay. I do want to go back and speak a little bit about women human rights defenders. And again, throughout the week, we have heard about so many human rights defenders around the globe. I know I'm going to ask Susan to say a few words about the parliamentarians and violence against parliamentarians. But let me first say this. Women human rights defenders are exposed basically to the same types of risk that male defenders who defend human rights communities and the environment face. But however, women human rights defenders are also exposed to gender-based violence and gender-specific risks because we challenge existing gender norms within our communities and in the societies. So I actually want to call on Susan O'Malley. Susan, if you can say a few words about some of the work that you did this week for a few minutes around defending the rights of women parliamentarians who are also under attack and are experiencing violence during this period.
Yes. I thought I had a day off, Ozzy.
I had to call on you, Susan. I couldn't help myself.
A lot, I must say.
Just a few, if you can say.
We did an event, why violence against women parliamentarians should concern us. And I think we had a young person from the Philippines who was amazing. And I thought, this is the future. Well, that's good. We had a woman parliamentarian from South Sudan. My goodness, what a courageous woman. And then we had a Canadian who's an indigenous woman, actually, from Peru. I had tried, we had also a woman from Armenia who spoke. I had tried to get AOC from this country, and she finally said no. And I thought about it, and I think people are so traumatized that it happened in this country, and they haven't yet, it's too raw. We don't know what happened completely. And if you go to AOC's website, you can see it evoked trauma in her childhood, and it's very, very moving. But it was like the United States couldn't speak yet about violence against parliamentarians, but it's so alive. Right. And the latest, now I can't remember, it's a report, international report about parliamentarians, and it talks about the percentage of women who are parliamentarians and all of that. But this year, they put in a thing talking about violence and how it discourages women from participation and how rough it is. Mm-hmm. I did it with Marilu McPhedran, who's a senator in Canada, who has suffered a good bit of abuse when she tries to push forward. Well, the latest thing is the right to die. My goodness, that has. So women parliamentarians and violence, it's all over the place. And
Thank you, Susan. We often think that by the time a woman becomes a politician, by the time she's leading in our societies, she's no longer experiencing violence, which is far from the truth. And Marsha, I want to go back to you. And before we show the segment and end our program today, I want to ask you, can you speak to really, right now at this forum, 25,000 participants, majority of whom are women and young women and girls, have joined this forum. We know that at the time when the right has become more and more powerful around the globe, at a time when women's movements are under attack, we have one of the largest gatherings ever here virtually. It's been an incredible experience. And I want to ask you, Marsha, can you speak as an artist, as a filmmaker, and as someone who's excited about human rights work and who really gives a platform to that? What does this moment call on us? What should we be doing from your vantage point?
Well, I think that we need to really, be aware of what's going on and not let down our guard, because I think we are in dangerous times. Susan said something about, AOC, and I remember watching her speak because that man, one of those horrible men, insulted her on the steps, and she actually spoke out. But clearly, our last president invoked a lot of violence against women, women in our own country, women in our government, House of Representatives and senators. And I think that we really have to be prepared. You see it's happening everywhere. I mean, what they're doing, like the civil right, like the voting restrictions. and the abortion rights. I mean, this country would, the United States alone would be very happy to oppress women. I mean, COVID's been terrible for women. So many women have lost their jobs and are not going to get their jobs back. It's been disastrous. And I think that we have to take responsibility because no one does it but you. I mean, that's what you learn about everything. If you're not going to do it, it's not going to be done for you, and there's strength in numbers. There's absolute, strength in numbers. I remember watching the women in Oregon, the Yellow Jacket mothers during the protests. And I thought a lot about that. And, for me, if the election had turned out very differently, and I protested a lot after the previous election of Donald Trump, that I would have been out in the streets. Like I saw this when I thought I would have been out every single day because, that's how they get you. If you think that it's going to go away, if you think that, someone else is going to fix it or some other woman will fix it, I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi, how hard she works and she can't fix it alone. I mean, she's up against a lot of things. Talk about a strong woman who doesn't let men take her down. But, and that's what I think. I think there's definitely strength in numbers. And we should never, I think you should always expect the worst. I think you should definitely expect that if there's a chance to take your rights away, people will take them away because it empowers them. And I'll just say one thing that was said to me by someone really wonderful, actually at Ms. Magazine, when we started this process, and she said to me, because I didn't really quite understand certain things about Iran. And she said, this is why they control men. They let men have all this power over women, and that empowers men. It's a crappy power, but it empowers men. And to think, because really they're being completely controlled by the government, but, and that's what they're doing in this country. They do it through, minority, demonizing the other. In Iran, it's demonizing women. In lots of countries, it's demonizing women. So I think we should really be on guard and the further the country moves, the world moves to the right, I think the more danger it is for women because that means men can do whatever they damn please.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're gonna, before we show the last, no, it's not ready. Oh, it's not ready. Okay, so I think she's getting the last scene ready. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay.
I know we have to go in a couple of minutes. I just want to reiterate again, I posted some stuff in the chat. We have a website, nasrinfilm.com. The film is available around the world. Right now, for those of you who are on this, if you haven't seen the film, we're making the film thanks to a gift from our dear friend, Kristen Wolf, I think, who's on here, who's one of my executive producers, making the film available to stream for free to people that are watching today. But the film is also now available around the world. It's in Canada. I saw somebody from Estonia. They bought it for Estonian television. So there are lots of ways if you go to the website. And also I see people from lots of organizations, and we have been hosting impact screenings. And one of the things that's been very, very important for the film is impact. We also want to make a difference. The film isn't just a film; it's also a tool, for bringing attention to the work of Nasrin and other human rights defenders. And what we have found is because the film has played at various different organizations around the world, legal organizations, bar associations have issued statements to the Iranian government. We spoke before the European Parliament; they issued a statement. So, it's become part of a global conversation. And of those of you who know how the government works there, the more noise we can make, the better it is for the activists because they're not buried under, they're not shut up. And so if you wish to host a screening, please go to our website. It's very easy to do. We want as many people as possible to see the film and also to be inspired by Nasrin and the work that she does.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Marsha, I want to see if any of the participants have a question for you. This is your opportunity to ask Marsha any question. Please, if you have a question, put it in the chat box now. And I think we have time for a question or two.
I love questions.
Marsha loves questions.
Okay. I don't have a question, but I'd love to just say something if you don't mind. And I apologize if you hear my kids screaming in the background. It's Saturday, so they're with me. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I thought was really powerful in the film was when Nasrin touches on the way women who are standing up for women's rights in her country are viewed when they're mothers, and the fact that there's this notion of maybe being a bad mother because you might be indirectly putting your children in harm's way, or you might be absent for a period of time from your children. And I just thought it was really powerful because, I mean, to her situation, it's to a much larger extent, but I think that that's something that women around the world have to tackle. This notion of we always want to be wonderful moms, but there really is an aspect to being a wonderful mom that's showing your children that you're standing up for what's right in the world, and not to let those narratives that you're actually doing something wrong as a mother get in your way or stop you from wanting to do what you really believe is right. So thank you. It was really a beautiful film. I love it.
Thank you, Marsha. You want to speak to that because I think
yes, because I think you're saying it's really, really important. You know, my father was a politician. You know, my father was a Republican, but he was a Rockefeller Republican. For those of you that are old enough to know that that wasn't the Republican Party of today. But, and, you know, so I grew up around people giving service. And so I learned about that. And when my daughter, who's now almost 25, was, I mean, we took her to protests, you know, against the war in Iraq downtown. I mean, she was 7 or 8. And we, you know, we obviously after the election, we went to the marches downtown, and we've done a lot of things. I think as a mother, I think it's, if you care about these things, it's really important to be to be an example to your children. You know, they may not follow that path, but I think planting the seed, you know, of a person that takes action, you know, if it's in their character, it will blossom. If you don't plant the seed, you know, we have to be role models for our children. The people that I know whose kids vote, you know, and who are politically active, it's because they showed that to their kids. You know, that's what I think. I mean, I think that, you know, the older generation, my mother, you know, and father, you know, there was a lot of fear about some of these things. You know, danger was dangerous, but I think always being a role model for children really, and I think Nasrin is her daughter would be the first to say she's a role model to her.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, there is a question, is the best way to be aware or support human rights in Iran, and Nasrin, to go through Amnesty International. Is there an organization's name for the group in Iran in the movie that sell dolls as fundraisers? Do you want to address that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly the question, but on the website, we have 2 petitions. We have one through PEN America, who we've been working with for a very long time, who's been very active on behalf of Nasrin. And then we have the Nowruz petition. We just had a great event with Amnesty USA and Canada, and we have their petition online. And we also have links to lots of other organizations with, you know, if you care about what they're doing, you can link to their organization, because we want people to take action and be active.
Yeah, so definitely go and revisit Marsha's website if you haven't. And there are a number of you know, organizations, and I also want to put a plug for the Women Human Rights Defenders International Coalition, for all of you to visit. And now there is also the Urgent Action Fund for Asia Pacific, and I know Mary Jane Real, who couldn't join us today, but she's also involved. Her organization is also involved with this. At this point, it's 11 o'clock. Marsha, I want to thank you for joining us, for being at the forum.
For joining us today, and I hope you'll watch the film. Again, our website, Nasrin Film, and again, if you want to host a screening, there's a form you can fill out for your organization, because in some countries you may not be able to access it, you know, for whatever reasons, but through our website, you'll learn how to do that. And I appreciate everybody's interest in the film. And I always say thank you for supporting Nasrin and the film, because that's what we're about.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for joining us today. Happy Nowruz, Nowruz Piruz, for those Iranians and others who celebrate Nowruz. And onward, and in solidarity, I want to say goodbye to everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.